Given the fallibility of human judgment, there has always been the danger that an execution could result in the killing of an innocent person. Nevertheless, when the U.S. Supreme Court held the administration of the death penalty to be unconstitutional in 1972, there was barely any mention of the issue of innocence in the 9 opinions issued. Although mistakes were surely made in the past, the assumption prevailed that such cases were few and far between. Almost everyone on death row was surely guilty. However, as federal courts began to more thoroughly review whether state criminal defendants were afforded their guaranteed rights to due process, errors and official misconduct began to regularly appear, requiring retrials. When defendants were now afforded more experienced counsel, with fairly selected juries, and were granted access to scientific testing, some were acquitted and released. Since 1973, 200 former death row prisoners have been exonerated of all charges related to the wrongful convictions that had put them on death row. On June 4, 2024, the Missouri Supreme Court set a September 24, 2024, execution date for death-sentenced prisoner Marcellus Scott Williams, despite serious doubts that he was not involved in the murder for which he is incarcerated. The announcement came just hours after the state Supreme Court ruled that Governor Mike Parson did not violate any rules when he dissolved a board of inquiry, established in June 2023 by his predecessor, Eric Greitens, to investigate Mr. Williams' claim of innocence. In August 2023, attorneys with the Midwest Innocence Project, on behalf of Marcellus Scott Williams, filed a suit arguing that Governor Parson did not have the authority to dissolve the board, as its members had not issued their recommendations. The day after the dissolution of the inquiry board, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey asked the state Supreme Court to set an execution date for Mr. Williams. But the question is what brought Marcellus Scott Williams to Missouri's death row. According to the court records, during a daytime burglary at her home on August 11, 1998, Felicia Gale was stabbed to death. On the same day, August 11, 1998, Marcellus Scott Williams drove his grandfather's Buick LeSabre to a bus stop and caught a bus to University City. Once there, he began looking for a house to break into. Williams came across the home of Felicia Gale. According to the prosecutors, Marcellus Scott Williams knocked on the front door, but no one answered. Williams then knocked out a window pane near the door, reached in, unlocked the door, and entered Gale's home. He went to the second floor and heard water running in the shower. It was Gale. Williams went back downstairs, rummaged through the kitchen, found a large butcher knife, and waited. Gale left the shower and called out, asking if anyone was there. She came down the stairs. Williams attacked, stabbing 467 and cutting Gale 43 times, inflicting 7 fatal wounds. Afterwards, Williams went to an upstairs bathroom and washed off. He took a jacket and put it on to conceal the blood on his shirt. Before leaving, Williams placed Gale's purse and her husband's laptop computer and black carrying case in his backpack. The purse contained, among other things, a St. Louis Post-Dispatch ruler and a calculator. Williams left out the front door and caught a bus back to the Buick. According to court records, after returning to the car, Marcellus Scott Williams picked up his girlfriend, Laura Asaro. Asaro noticed that, despite the summer heat, Williams was wearing a jacket. When he removed the jacket, Asaro noticed that Williams' shirt was bloody and that he had scratches on his neck. Williams claimed he had been in a fight. Later in the day, Williams put his bloody clothes in his backpack and threw them into a sewer drain, claiming he no longer wanted them. There was an abundance of forensic evidence including fingerprints, footprints, hair, and a DNA trace on the murder weapon at the crime scene. In May 1999, Gale's family announced a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the case. In response, two individuals, Henry Cole and Laura Asaro, named Marcellus Scott Williams as the culprit. Williams had an extensive criminal record. Cole volunteered that Williams had made a jailhouse confession to him when both were in jail on charges unrelated to the murder. Cole had already been released before volunteering his information. Williams had started serving a 20-year sentence for robbing a donut shop. Laura Asaro, the girlfriend of Williams at the time of the crime, gave testimony that Williams had confessed to her and detailed what had happened. This is after she discovered evidence from the crime scene in Williams' car. Unlike Cole's deposition, which was compatible with news reports, she is said to have provided details that had not been mentioned in the public accounts of the crime. On August 31, 1998, Williams was arrested on unrelated charges and incarcerated at the St. Louis City Workhouse. From April until June 1999, Williams shared a room with Henry Cole. One evening in May, Cole and Williams were watching television and saw a news report about Gale's murder. Shortly after the news report, Williams told Cole that he had committed the crime. Over the next few weeks, Cole and Williams had several conversations about the murder. As he had done with Laura Asaro, Williams went into considerable detail about how he broke into the house and killed Gale. At Mr. Williams' trial, the prosecution relied largely on the testimony of two individuals, a jailhouse informant and Mr. Williams' former girlfriend. Both witnesses were facing unrelated criminal charges and stood to benefit from testifying for the state and against Mr. Williams. Their testimony shifted throughout the course of questioning and often contradicted the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene. In addition to the never-presented DNA evidence, as well as evidence of racial discrimination and jury selection, during the trial, the judge had refused to allow testing of some of the DNA evidence found at the scene. Williams was convicted of Gale's murder in 2001 by the jury after testimony from 22 witnesses. Williams had already been in and out of jails and prisons, his fifth arrest in the previous 4 years in February 1999 for crimes including armed robbery and homicide. Williams was held on death row at Potosi Correctional Center after his trial. He maintained his innocence in the Gale case until he accepted an Alford plea of guilty in August 2024. In United States law, an Alford plea, and the Alford doctrine, is a guilty plea in criminal court, whereby a defendant in a criminal case does not admit to the criminal act and asserts innocence, but accepts imposition of a sentence. This plea is allowed even if the evidence to be presented by the prosecution would be likely to persuade the judge or jury to find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This can be caused by circumstantial evidence and testimony favoring the prosecution, and difficulty finding evidence and witnesses that would aid the defense. Questions continued to be raised as the state Supreme Court would neither hear the new DNA evidence nor stay the execution of Marcellus Scott Williams. Marcellus Scott Williams was sentenced to death for the 1998 killing of local newspaper reporter Felicia Gale, but has always maintained his innocence. There is no physical evidence tying Mr. Williams to the crime scene, and for many years, the trial court refused to allow DNA testing of some of the evidence that was collected by investigators. In 2015, Marcellus Scott Williams was granted permission for DNA testing of the murder weapon, which revealed a male DNA profile inconsistent with that of Mr. Williams. Despite the potential significance of this testing, the court refused to allow Mr. Williams to present it during post-conviction proceedings and ultimately scheduled an execution for August 2017. Just hours ahead of Marcellus Scott Williams' scheduled execution. Then Governor Greitens stayed the execution through executive order and impaneled a board of 5 former judges to investigate Mr. Williams' case. On September 24, 2024, Marcellus Scott Williams was executed by lethal injection at 6 p.m. Connecticut at Eastern Reception, Diagnostic and Correctional Center in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Despite pleas to save his life. For his last meal, Williams was served chicken wings and tater tots. And in his last statement, which was written down and witnessed on September 24, 2024, was, "All praise be to Allah in every situation." Marcellus Scott Williams was 55 years old at the time of his execution. Thank you for watching Death Row.